Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog Arichcomiclife. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching over 800 comedians and counting over the last 46 years. My guest today is the brilliant comedian Mr. Sean Mcloughlin. Yes! Hello!
I made it. Hello.
How are you?
I'm so grand. As I told you before we recorded, I ate my dinner in about 7 minutes directly before this. So and I've got a good microphone set up here. So I apologize if your viewers get a very in-depth sound at my digestive system.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
I'm gonna interview you for the next 45 minutes or hour or so, all about your comedy career, and I'd like to go way back to the start and ask you, how did you become a comedian?
Well, I started in at university. I went to university in Newcastle,
Right.
and I started at a perfect time. Really, I was a teenager, and I was so desperate to do something. And I was so desperate to, I don't know, be somebody in that way that, you are when you're 19. And I think I'd always loved comedy. I always wanted to do something to do with comedy or writing or something like that. And stand-up just felt like the most accessible thing that I could do. And so I found out that there was a regular comedy open mic night in a place called the Dog and Parrot in Newcastle, which is still running every week, I think. And
I know it well.
Yeah. Have you been to that night? Have you been to the Tuesday night?
Yeah.
So many great Northern comics came through there. And I just started doing that once a month, once every 2 months. And that's kind of all I did for a few years. I thought, this is me becoming a comedian. Then eventually a couple of the people there who ran it told me to get in touch with other gigs, and things kind of snowballed. But that's where I started.
So, did you do 5-minute slots in pubs, or was it a 10-minute set you were doing, or what was your first gig like, and your first few gigs?
Well, I always think like the Northern circuit is so different from doing it in London.
Yeah.
Because in London, it's like when you start, it's a strict 5 minutes, sometimes even a strict 3 minutes for brand new comics. Whereas I sort of, from the very beginning, like the standard open spot where I was 10 minutes. So I was always doing kind of 7 to 10 straight out of the gate. But it was all pub gigs, it was open mics. It was that for a long, long, long time. And then occasionally, I'd sniff at doing an open spot at one of the bigger clubs in Manchester. Right. I'd get the train down and I'd do the Frog and Bucket or XS Malarkey, and then I'd get the train back. But it was a really great, I still think it's the best, if you want to be a comedian, I always think move up north. Like, it's so great. There's so many amazing gigs, amazing audiences.
Oh yeah.
Have you been to many shows near your homeland?
Obviously,
you're from Carlisle.
I go to Manchester a lot. I've got some friends in. I've got a very good friend in Manchester with his wife, and I go to the comedy there a lot. I go to Newcastle a lot. Carlisle, my home city, is really up and coming. They have the fire station and the sand centre, and about 18 months ago, I lost my mum, and I was in a really low place. And my brother said to me, go to the comedy. And the Noise Next Door were on in Carlisle. So I went and I sat at the back with a solitary pint of beer all on my own. And they banged it on, and they went, hello, Carlisle. Can anybody tell me what's good about Carlisle? And somebody yelled out, Carlisle United. And then they said, can anybody tell me what's bad about Carlisle? And a friend of mine who I was not aware was there yelled out, Richard Gill. And they went, oh my God, he's here. He's supposed to be in London,
I just think that the thought of you ever sitting at the back of a gig, sort of trying to be inconspicuous. Because obviously, I'm used to you being the king of the front row. But yeah, it's around there is where I started. It's it's a great part of the world, and I kind of
yeah, it is.
Yeah, and the circuit's still pretty strong up there, certainly in the northwest.
Brilliant. What do you like to talk about on stage?
I don't know if I have anything particular anymore. I used to only talk about myself for years. I was so. For a while, I think we've just come out of a phase where it was very kind of autobiographical, and the more honest you were about yourself, the better. But now I sort of am so against that. All I want to talk about is things other than myself. So anything that interests me, I'll try and talk about. And it always helps if you find a topic that other comics haven't done as much. But I'll do pretty much anything if I can.
Yeah. That's what I like about you. It's the unpredictability of your act. It's fantastic. It works so well every time I see it. It's really good and very, very original. To date,
thank you.
My pleasure. To date, what's been your worst comedy gig? I can't imagine you have many of them.
Well, not anymore. But there was a lean few years, Rich. I tell you, there was. The Dog and Parrot is a very unforgiving place to a teenager from Brighton. There's a few. I definitely think there was. I'd say there's my sort of early to mid 20s were, I would call them the sort of sad open mic years, where it felt like I was never close to knocking on the door of being a professional. It took me so long, and there was one in Portsmouth that always sticks in my mind, where I think it was the final of a local competition and I was on first and I just crashed and burned up there. And I basically walked off the stage and straight out the door. I didn't even want to see anyone. I was just so upset. And I missed the last train home. And I remember there was a train to a town called Littlehampton.
Yeah, know it. Yeah.
And so I got there, but there was no trains left back to Brighton. So I tried to walk home from Littlehampton to, which was about, I looked it up about a week later, like it was doable, but it would have been, I think it would have taken me 5.5 hours if I'd taken the motorway and I'd gone along the beach, and it was just hell. So that was probably the lowest. I think that was probably the worst moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the famous Ken Dodd story where he's on stage and he said, ladies and gentlemen, Freud said, and he described what it was like to laugh. So it would start off here and it would work up and you would make a noise. And he went on for about 5 minutes, and then at the end of it he said, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, Freud never played Glasgow Empire on a Friday night. and when I write my blog
well, that's it. And it's always it's always there, I think.
Yeah.
That's the thing with it. It never leaves. It doesn't matter how much better you get at comedy, how much more experience you get, the venues you get to play, the audiences you get to face. There's just always a chance that it will just flatline.
Yeah.
And it still rips the soul out of me a bit. I mean, I've got better at it, but it still really hurts when it doesn't go well.
When I was writing the blog, when I first started, I went on a writing course, and there was 2 or 3 other people with me who were all wanting to be reviewers. And I got invited onto this, and the woman said, we forgot about you. What are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm not a reviewer. I'm not a critique. I'm not a diarist. I'm a member of the audience, and I'm out to have a good time. So I always look at my blog as an enthuse, because I always look at you all as heroes, as you have to walk out and do it. And it's the most wonderful thing to watch. So that's why I enjoy myself so much. So thank you.
Oh, no. I mean, the truth is the feeling is so mutual, because I always think that audiences are heroes, really. Like to take, especially to go to a lot of the places I play. You know, if you go to a weekend club, and you know, obviously they have certain reputations, but most of the acts are still unknowns to the man on the street in those clubs, and they're high quality, but they're still unknown. And so for them to just go out and give these people who they don't know their all, that's a great thing. I think actually the more time you spend in comedy or in show business, I think a lot of people lose sight of what it is to actually be in an audience. Because now I find it very hard to get into the head of anyone who would go and see comedy. I'm just like, why would anyone do this?
That's fascinating, because I obviously love to go, and I've been going for years and years and years, and I can't imagine anybody going and not enjoying it. Yeah,
I still think it's the best form of live entertainment there is. I think it's the most thrilling thing to see and to perform, and but I guess different tastes, isn't it, for different people?
Do you have any nerves before you go on stage, and how do you cope with them if you do?
It really depends. I'm pretty okay. I'm okay most of the time now, but I think it's it really depends. I mean, it used to be so bad. The nerves used to be so bad. I remember, it was certainly the first sort of 6 months, first few gigs I did. I remember being on stage and being aware that I was actually shaking.
Wow.
Like a cartoon character. I remember thinking, oh, this is like something in a film. Like, you're so nervous that you're actually shaking.
Wow, but, that's incredible.
Yeah, and so I think eventually you just do something enough and it becomes more routine and you don't get as nervous. But if it's a big gig, if I'm doing a lot of new stuff, if the nerves come. But I guess it's experience. It's the only substitute, really.
I was just going to say, you have to keep going. It is experience, isn't it? Yeah, it is experience.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any secret. I think some people adapt to it better than others. I mean, there are many acts who never get over their nerves, I think. They really never do. And that's really hard.
Yeah. I remember 30 odd years ago, I first came to London, and I used to live Crouch End in North London, and I used to go to the downstairs, the King's Head, a lot. And I first saw Harry Hill there. And he was late for the gig, and he jumped and he brushed past me. He was really nervous, and he jumped up on stage and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry I'm late. I had to have a testicle brought down," and with a look of panic on his face, and everybody burst out laughing, and he went from Derby and he was away. It was such a good line, and he was aware of it. So he
what a comedian! What a comedian!
Oh, he was superb. He was really funny, and of course he is now. How do you remember all your routines on stage? Do you have a way of remembering them all?
Do you know what? I don't. It's not something that's ever been a problem.
No.
It's never been a problem for me. I think whenever I'm doing like a preview of a new show or new material, I'll have bullet points on a notepad with me, because usually that's allowed.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I practice a lot. I rehearse. I not even deliberately. I'll repeat lines again and again.
Yeah.
My wife always says she can tell. She says she just hears me just talking to myself, and she always knows that I'm going over my new. But I view it like remembering a song that you really like. I never sit down and actually try and learn the lyrics to songs that I love, but eventually they just come because you spend so much time with them.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. My favourite band are Madness, and I know every song.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now let me tell you a song by Madness that I've been listening to loads of recently, and that's a song called Michael Caine.
Yeah.
That song feels very underrated, because it was a bit of a hit, but it's not in the same vein as their other stuff. I think that's a brilliant song.
It's a great song, and he wanted to be on the record with them. He requested they write a song about him, and they put it on the album Keep Moving, which is a very underrated album of theirs.
They are, that's interesting, man. And Madness are a band that I wish I knew a bit more about, because I know they released that. I mean, this is not a Madness interview, I'm aware. But you're probably the guy to ask. What was the album they released?
Madness all night.
There was an album they released a few years ago that was viewed as like it's their greatest album, where they'd done it late in their careers, and it was all about London.
Liberty,
what was it called? It had sugar and spice on it. That's it. And it felt to me like that album, it should have just become a musical.
Yeah. I met them at HMV. I met all 7 of them, and they signed my copy of it. And I said to them, I haven't queued this long since I saw you at Carlisle Market Hall in 1979. I tried to get in to the Two-Tone tour, and I couldn't get in. And all 7 of them stood up and went, "God bless you, sir." Absolutely love them. Anyway, let's move on. Let's go on to Edinburgh. What was your first Edinburgh Fringe like?
Okay. The first one ever, or as a solo act, or
the first one you went to, and your first solo show.
Now, that's the first one I went to. I just visited in 2008 or 9. And I'd been doing a bit of stand-up, and not loads, but I knew that I eventually wanted to go up there, and that was the place to be. And loads of people built their years around it, even people at my level, which was a very low level.
Yeah.
And I just went up for a few days, and I just thought it was the most intoxicating, brilliant place I'd ever been. I couldn't believe an event like that took place, and I still don't really. I mean, I actually that's one thing. I think if I have a problem with the Edinburgh Fringe, it's that not enough people really know quite what an amazing event we have in this country. Like, it is so unlike anything else on earth.
It is.
And I just think that nothing beats that first time. I think nothing beats the first time you go to the festival, because it's just like it's like you go to the Moulin Rouge or something like that. It's just like otherworldly. And I just did a few guest spots, and I really enjoyed it. And it definitely lit a fire in me. And then my first solo show was, I'd done a few double headers up there, and I'd done a couple of the package shows.
Yeah. Sort
of in subsequent years, all sort of pretty low level stuff. And it was 2013, and I was 25 years old, and I just wanted to do an hour. I was just desperate to go up and do an hour, and I didn't have an agent, and I didn't have a PR, and I didn't have any money. I didn't have all the stuff that people said you needed to have, but I was just desperate, so I did it on the Free Fringe in Espionage, which was a legendary Free Fringe venue for a while. I think it's closed down now.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. I loved it, and I just got into that cycle of I just thought, well, my career is, there's something here, but it's not clicking for whatever reason. But if I just keep going to Edinburgh every year and try do a new show and make each show a bit better than the one before, maybe that's a good way to build a career.
That's brilliant, because I first went in 2005, and I remember thinking to myself, if I go, I know I'm going to go every year since, and I have done. So I got to my 16th year as a member of the audience in 2019, and of course there desperately wasn't one last year. But you're right. It's like as soon as you step off the train, the atmosphere, it just hits you, and it's incredible. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a city that is so easy to love anyway.
Yeah.
And then to throw in the biggest cultural event on earth. I mean, it's sort of it's the type of thing. I mean, I don't know how the festival's I think the festival survives, of course, after all this, and it will, you know, it will get back to. It might not be what it was, but it will be still a huge, amazing thing.
Yeah.
But I always think, like, God, if I have grandkids one day, or even children, and I explain to them what it was like, they're probably not going to believe me because it sounds unbelievable.
Oh,
it sounds like the Rio it's like the Rio Carnival or something like that, but it's happening in Britain.
Yeah. I go up. I always go the middle week of August, and there's about 4 or 5 friends of mine come up with me, and I see about 50 shows. I plan everything I'm going to see, and I'm exhausted at the end of it, and my liver's battered with beer and everything. But it's just the best time. It's and you know, sit me in the Pleasance courtyard with a pint of Guinness and a Fringe guide, and it's just incredible. It's just amazing. The atmosphere and the shows. It's an extraordinary thing.
Yeah, and I you know, it can really be tough emotionally.
Yeah.
And I've definitely, you know, it's always treated me okay. You know, I think my only bona fide hit was probably my last show. The others all did fine, but that was my 2018 show was my last one I did up there. I missed 2019. And I sort of view it now as like, well, if that's the last time I go to Edinburgh in this kind of phase of my life, because, you know, we're missing missing so many festivals in between, I go, at least I went out on a high, because I have nothing but fond memories for that place and for that festival.
You've appeared in many acclaimed solo shows at the Fringe. Tell me about your writing process. Where do you get your ideas from?
I just always write lots of stand up, and then I just sort of figure out the bits that I really like and that I keep coming back to and adding to. I tend to sort of subconsciously realize, oh, well, this is probably what I want the show to be about, or to take up big parts. But really, I view most of my shows as just hours of stand up. I mean, I try not to. I don't really overcomplicate it. I don't try and prove any points or anything like that. You know, I try to stand up and make it a bit bigger and make it so it all fits together.
Do you carry a notebook?
And really, it comes from the jokes.
Yeah. Do you carry?
I do. Sorry. I do carry a notebook with me.
Yeah. And do you write them down as you get them, the ideas?
And I do type it out, and I do type stuff out.
Right.
Yeah. And I type stuff out, and I move bits around and like word processors and stuff like that. And I try and experiment with orders and different structures all the time. But you perform it, it changes, and then you go back, and it's such a strange I wouldn't say I'm disciplined, because I'm quite, you know, you have to work hard, but it's that I don't have a process. I don't have there's no formula. It's just, you know, chaos.
I think your type of comedy, if there's no process, I think that's better for it, because, as I say, it's the originality, and you never know what you're going to do next, which I love.
Oh, that's good. I mean, I do still think at the core it's just the jokes that I love. I love writing stand up and figuring bits out, and then I guess once you have all the stuff and you can just figure out the best way to perform it all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really, really fun process, and I think it's the part of stand up that I miss the most. Is working on those big project shows, like working on a new tour show, working on a new Edinburgh show. It was such a... Yeah, that's what I miss, really.
Yeah. You supported Ricky Gervais on his International Humanity Tour, and have supported Bill Burr at the Royal Albert Hall, as well as Doug Stanhope and Katherine Ryan. Tell me about these experiences.
Katherine Ryan was a fair few years ago now, when she was really breaking through, and I My representation at the time was also her live representation. Both of us had the same basic live booker, as did a few acts. And so there was a rotation of her tour supports, and I was lucky enough to be one of them. And she was just so magnificent. I mean, she's so still one of the best stand-ups I think I've ever seen or worked with.
Yeah, I agree.
Such a pro. And like, this was in sort of 2014. So this was sort of, frankly, it was I was able to become a professional comedian partly because of being able to do a few of these tour supports with her.
Right.
And it was a great tour that other people would, and then I'd come back onto the tour for a little bit, and you could just feel that she was getting bigger by the day, like she was getting more and more popular. And now she's, one of the biggest stars in the country.
She is, yeah.
Yeah. And still one of the best comics.
Yeah.
And then I opened for Gervais. Sort of, I basically, on the Humanity tour, I was the second choice. I was the runner. If the main guy, Doc Brown, couldn't do it, I would get called in.
Right.
And it was brilliant. I loved it. And so we played. So I got to play like in Copenhagen and in Iceland, and then he went on to do another tour, and Doc Brown was moving away from stand-up, so I've been opening for him right up until lockdown. Basically, I was opening for him on all of those dates, and it's great. I can't really put it any other way. It's a thoroughly pleasurable job.
Was it daunting with the bigger audiences? Did you find it daunting at all?
It was I think I've ever had as a stand-up, if I'm honest.
Wow.
Was playing those sort of rooms, because it's such a, you go on, and a lot of the time, the rooms, they're not full yet. People are kind of coming in. None of them are there for you. Most of them hate the fact you even exist. And so you sort of have to go, all right, well, I've got 20, 25 minutes here. And you go, well, the first 7 to 10, it's going to be hard to get that much going, because a lot of people are just finding their seats. Yeah. But you just figure out how to do it. And some of the, genuinely probably some of the best nights of my life, of my career, have been doing those tour shows. Wow. And I'm really proud of being able to do those gigs. And
well done you, because they're big names, and I think obviously the more people that again, it's down to experience. The more experience you get of the bigger tours as well, makes you a better comedian. Yeah, I think so. I feel so lucky. I basically have this, back when I was sort of 2019, 2020, it was just such a nice career, because I would have those sort of moments where I'd play these very big glamorous gigs, but also I was still doing a lot of the club gigs, the sort of London open mic, new material stuff. I was previewing new shows. It was a very varied existence, and that's what I like. It's not like I play big theatres. I go, well, then I'm doing stand-up no matter where it is. If any, what is your ambition as a comedian? Would you like to be on TV? Would you like your own chat show? Would you like to do a quiz show? Is there anything that, being a comedian, the fact that you're a comedian, you think you could be able to achieve other than stand-up?
Well, at the moment, it's hard to even answer that, because from world domination to
in the real world,
to like, well, let's just see if I've still got a career, in 6 months. I'm at a point where if things could have stayed exactly where they were going into this for the rest of my life, I'd have been very, very happy. I have ambitions, but all of them come down to, I just want to keep working and keep being able to live a nice life and be creative and still pay my bills. So it's hard to put it. I'm not the. there's loads of stuff I want to do, but I don't have that. Some comics you meet and some people you meet who the ambition is all they've got. And for me, I'm happy to take the scenic route.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been such an awful time for everybody that I just wish you every success, because when you see such a great talent like yourself, you're just willing them to do so well, and you will. It will get better. There is no doubt. The comedy scene will become live again, touch wood, very soon, and we'll be able to see you again. We're all living in strange times. It's been an absolutely horrible 18 months. How have you found? Have you done any online gigs? How have you found online gigs as opposed to live stand-up?
I've been very pleasantly surprised with them. I didn't know what to expect. I thought they were a novelty that was sort of a bit fun for people to go and see and for us to perform at, and a kind of a nice way of building up a bit of a connection with people early on. And actually now, I bet that I bet a lot of them stick around even when the venues are reopening and stuff, because they're they're so convenient for everyone involved. That's what the main thing is.
Yeah.
Comedians don't have to travel and audiences don't have to go out. Nothing replaces live. Nothing ever will.
No.
But I've enjoyed them.
My view on
I'm pretty sure I've seen you at a couple of these, right? I think, yeah.
I go to a lot. If online comedy hadn't existed, if this hadn't existed, I don't know how I'd have got through lockdown. But I go to Always Be Comedy 3 times a week. I go to Return of the Crack, the Jarlath Regan.
That's it. You talked about Madness there, didn't you?
Yeah, I go there every Friday. Boothby Graffo's playing every Thursday. I love him. Or I go to Maureen Younger's chat show. Sometimes I go to a Saturday night one. So I do go quite a bit to them. Happy Mondays is another one with Sean James. That's a very good one. But when they first started off, there was no audio. So when I started laughing, I thought I was going to be taken away, because I was just laughing at 4 walls. And then it was Always Be Comedy. James Gilly had the bright idea of having like a virtual front row, which helped enormously for the comedians, because with all the timing and everything, with the laughter, and they could chat to the comedians, and the fact that there was a bit of atmosphere there helped enormously. But I'm with you. You can't beat live. It's a superb substitute. But I really miss going out on a Saturday night, having a few beers, and then watching a comedy show.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely been like it's definitely I've enjoyed it though.
Yeah. I think as well, the fact that it is online, it is useful, and I think it will continue when live venues open. I agree with that, because there are so many people who may not be able to get to comedy clubs, and it's accessible to them. So, I'm fascinated to know how the major clubs use this. Yeah.
Like, I know Hot Water, and I assume a few others that already have camera setups in their Friday, Saturday night clubs.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't take that much to just start streaming them and charging a little bit.
Yeah.
Make a bit more money for the club, make a bit more money for the acts.
I think you're right.
Promote the nights more, give more people access. Did
you do any outdoor gigs when you were able to?
I did loads. I did everything I could get my grubby mitts on. I did. I did everything.
So were you there with the cars honking the horns instead of laughing?
Yeah, I was. I did that. I did one. That was my first gig back.
Right.
It was in mid-July.
Right.
And it was just such.
Like?
It was. I mean, I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah.
and I just don't know. I mean, I don't know if they'll last. I don't know. I do think they're interesting. It's just a lot of the outdoor gigs, because you're able to get so many people there. Obviously, they're all spread out, but there was still it felt like stand-up. Whereas with the car one, this is something else now. But you know, you play the gig, and you make it fun, and it's one of those weird things where you go, well, here's a skill I didn't think I'd ever need, and now I have it. I can play to a car park in Enfield.
We went to the Greenwich Comedy Festival, and we were there all day, and there was about 1,000 people in the garden, and but they were all socially distanced, so I was way back. And I was laughing as loud as I could, but I thought, they're not going to be able to hear me. But it was still good because it was live, you know. But
it works, didn't it?
Yeah, very much so, yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what does happen. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present?
I mean, when I was growing up, the people I loved were like... I mean, they weren't even stand-ups. They were like Harry Enfield and Mike Myers, and those were the reasons I got into comedy. I just thought these crazy guys on telly were just so funny. But as for really, I work with so many great stand-ups, and I've seen so many great stand-ups. Catherine's always been one of my favourites. Yeah. I love John Kearns. Yeah. I love Sarah Keyworth and Chloe Petts. I mean, loads really. I mean, genuinely, I'm always the worst guy to ask that. Like if we're ever at the Edinburgh Fringe or anything, I'm the worst guy to ask for recommendations, because I'm always like, I love it all. It takes a lot for me to not like an act. I'm like that. But if I've got a group of friends who want to go for a comedy night, having seen so many comedians, they always come back to me and say, I've had a great night, because I can judge quite well whether or not my friends are going to like a comedian or not. It's weird because comedy is so subjective, but I think other than just delivering a gag or talking to an audience, if there's something more with the comedian, they're endearing, or they're crazy, or they're very visual, or whatever it is, that's a very attractive quality in an act. Yeah, 100%. I guess you're in a way, you're like one of those people who runs a wine shop, and they have a very small but exclusive clientele, and you just you know exactly what wine they need, you know.
Yeah, you could say that, Before you were a comedian like me, did you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
I went to a few. Yeah, I mean, I started, but I was so young, I suppose. So I sort of, much of the early stand-up I saw was at the gigs that I was at. But I used to go to gigs, sometimes like for my birthday, my parents would get me tickets to see a comedian in Brighton. They'd be like, I think I went to see Alan Carr years ago before he was famous, and I remember I went to see the Fast Show live or something.
That was brilliant,
It
was a Hammersmith Apollo. I saw it.
I saw him at the Brighton Centre. It would have been. I think that was their big goodbye tour, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then occasionally, me and my friends, I remember at least a couple of times when we were sort of in sixth form, 17, 18, and we were, getting into bars and stuff. We'd go to see kind of local open mic-y kind of level stuff in Brighton. Yeah. And it was so fascinating to us, because it was just like, it felt so adult. And it's like, I'm so glad that I'd experienced those things as a punter.
Yeah.
Because you go to the big shows and they're always great and slick, but then when you go to the smaller ones, it's like going to see bands or anything like that. It's like, a lot of them are quite not poor, but like, it's a scrappy amateur night. But then occasionally we'd have acts that we just loved and we just were obsessed with. And I think that in that way that only a teenager can be. I wish I'd gone to more. I mean, that's one thing. I think once you've crossed the Rubicon, I'll never be able to go to a comedy show and truly enjoy it the way an audience member does.
Yeah.
Because I think my mentality is different now.
I totally agree with you, because one of the things I love, especially writing the blog, is watching all the comedians develop. Because there's so many who I saw in tiny venues, especially at Edinburgh or in Manchester or in Brighton, at the Comedia. One that comes to mind is Peter Kay. I first saw him at a little tiny club in Manchester called the Jabez Clegg, which is no longer, and he was on a bill of 5 acts. And he was 4th on, and I laughed so hard at him, I missed the 5th act. I was still laughing. And I said to my mate, he's going to be a superstar. And we saw him at where the Halley play in Manchester, and then he did the big tours. We saw him at Hammersmith Apollo. But of course, Phoenix Nights, I absolutely loved coming from the north. It was such a great series. Well, I had Justin Moorhouse on here the other day, and he was telling me all about how it began. But,
oh, wow.
It was extraordinary.
I think that's I think it's one of the best sitcoms this country's ever produced.
Yeah,
and it's sort of strangely forgotten. Like, I think people don't really... Well, a lot of the sitcoms of that era sort of remembered, whereas that one seems to appeal. I think it's so good. It's easily as good as any of the others that were being made at that time.
I think the year it was made, it was the same year as The Office, which is equally as brilliant, if not better. But I agree. I think I know it was big at the time, but I agree with you. But I can recall episodes and lines and. It's just and the cast was superb. But the reason I asked the 2 questions about your favourite comedians and you go to the audience, there's a section in my blog called The Ones That Got Away, and I've written 25 comedians who have either passed on or I just hadn't had a chance to see, and there's some absolute gems in there. Morecambe and Wise were my very favourite. They're the reason why I do comedy. But the first gig I ever saw in the 70s was Les Dawson, and then Tommy Cooper and the 2 Ronnies and Ken Dodd. And I wrote it all down, and I thought, I've got something here. I had this great long list, and then I just started adding it, and that's how the blog came along. For me, they've got so many memories, and that's why I asked the questions. It's fascinating, the names that different comedians pull out. It's extraordinary. One of the highlights I saw was Rick Mail in Carlisle. He played Carlisle, and he was extraordinary. His trousers exploded. He threw a member of the audience out. It was amazing. And I thought, how can you get this? And to see the comedians like yourself, as I say, the originality from your act is extraordinary. Just before we go, and I've much enjoyed talking to you, I really have, and I wish you every success. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Are you writing anything? Is there any podcasts that you're on? Where can people find you on social media? Anything like that?
I'm on all the regular social medias. Yeah. It's just at Sean Mcloughlin, which is... well, I guess people will be able to see my name. I mean, that's always been a problem, I think. I have the second most popular spelling of both of those, both my first name and surname. But it's worth, that means if people do find me on social media, they must really want to. So that's nice. I'm on there, I'm on Instagram, Sean Mcloughlin Comedian. I guess I'll plug my albums. I've got a couple of comedy albums.
Please do, yeah.
You can listen to them on Spotify. You can buy them. You can wherever you stream or buy music, you can get them. And I've got shows on YouTube. I've got my last Edinburgh shows on YouTube. So yeah, it's called Hail Mary. Give it a watch if you fancy.
And it's brilliant. I have seen
thank you.
It is brilliant.
Oh, thank you. But other than that, the only thing I'd plug is your blog, Rich, because you're the kindling that is going to get the comedy fire back.
Yes, the support is there, my friend. My God, come on. We need comedy back, because the year that we've had, it's just been, so you just need to get it back, keep going to the comedy, and I'll support you all for as long as I can, and I really look forward to seeing you live again soon, my friend.
Yes, I look forward to seeing you either at an online gig or hopefully at one in person.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time. I've much enjoyed it, and all the very best to you.
Thank you so much, Rich. Take care of yourself.